the idea of balancing different interests. It's basically, are we tackling domestic violence and trying to introduce domestic violence leave because from a rights-based approach which recognises domestic violence as one of the egregious human rights breaches that we as a society will have no tolerance for, be it in and that workplace and all parts of society are due to challenge and address? Or are we balancing it as a thing for employers versus a thing for employees? Domestic violence leave and tackling domestic violence isn't just a nice thing for employees to have. It is an essential for our society to be a more equal society. And it's an essential for us to be a society which doesn't have the scourge, which is international but is a long record here in Ireland as well, of violence and domestic violence and violence against women in different forms. These are, it's different from negotiating between interest groups. It's a rights-based piece. So it's not a matter of balancing employers' interests with employees' interests when it comes to this. It's a matter of something that we as a society are trying to take really robust steps to tackle. And it's not simply, so I frankly, I don't know who those are who are concerned about domestic violence leaves in which business sectors. And I'm not going to hazard guesses. But I will say that there's the fact of objecting to this or being concerned. And again, yes, you've made it clear. It's not about whether that leave would happen, but whether or not what the rate it would happen at and so forth. If you start balancing that, you can come to a point where we end up with a meaningless rate of domestic violence leave with so many caveats that it becomes effectively unusable. So I appreciate you've referenced the state of society generally, the public interest and employee well-being multiple times. I'm not trying to remove those. I like that section. I actually think the state of society general and the public interest is sufficient to cover the economic and encompass where there are economic issues that might really affect the public interest, or there are economic factors within society generally. I think that Part B, the state of society generally, the public interest, is sufficient. But I don't think we should be balancing the public interest, society and employee well-being against, different sectors' specific preferences, or the, whether it's been a good year or a bad year for any one sector, whether they say they can afford it or not in some sectors or not. So I just really urge you, Minister, to consider that point A, 7A, and some of the language that is used in 7C really still is inappropriate and is not, you are not an adjudicator around a balancing of interests. You are the Minister for Equality, and you are trying to address a social ill. And trying to ensure that our employment regulations reflect and support that. So I just think the mission is slightly, that needs to be centre stage in the mission. And I'd urge a more ambitious approach and a more thoughtful approach to have the right criteria for the right piece at hand. And again, to listen to that fact of, whatever it might be around the separate issues of the, piecework, extra work or overtime, but that the basic rate of pay would remain the same, because I think the safety issue, that's again, listening to the fact that this is a particular tool for a particular circumstances, and the circumstance is a circumstance in which people may be unsafe. And I know that it's really hard to bring these forward, because when we argued in the Seanad for coercive control, and we were told by a Minister for Justice that all the various tools we had already would work, and we kept saying they don't work. And it took quite an argument to have officials even understand that coercive control was particular, and it required particular measures to tackle it. And I'm really glad that there was that shift in understanding, a willingness to listen to the detail and the reality of people's experiences and design policy that worked for people, rather than take existing policy tools and simply trying to kind of ram them onto a new situation. And that was a real breakthrough that we had in coercive control. I think, Minister, we're in the opportunity, as you have said, to be leaders on domestic violence leave. I think it'd be a brilliant piece if we have good legislation on it, but exactly because we're leaders and we're one of the first to do it, let's do it right. And let's have it designed for the actual needs of those experiencing domestic violence. Let's set a good template rather than borrow an old template, but set a good template for others who will, in other countries, I hope, follow and also bring in leave in this respect.